trying to touch. Now if you get 4, that's great.
Okay.
Yeah. 3's still a pass.
Do we always get this set of straight teeth for this
Yeah, it'll
part
be
of
a
the work?
proper treated
Be like
occlusion, and we do try and look at it to make sure that it's smooth, and I try and find one with fairly big molar teeth, because if you try and make them on very short teeth, it's really hard to bend. So I usually try and find one with big teeth,
Okay.
or biggish teeth, and reasonably straight. So we look at that, then we look at the loop height for these loops, and they need to be long enough to have some flexibility in them for adjustment. They need to be, I mean, they could be a bit taller than that, they don't want to be much shorter than that, and they need to be nicely contoured in. They don't want to be touching the gum, and they don't want to be sticking out, because that's a big no-no for, you
So
know, just
leave a little space
it won't.
Half a millimeter, is that?
Yeah, I mean a millimetre, whatever you need in there, but you don't want them actually touching the gum, so that you'd get a dehiscence if you rammed it in, and you don't want them, again, don't want them sticking out. Now, the most common failure here is this bend, where this isn't contoured over the contact point, and it comes out too far.
So what do you think of this one here? Is that?
I think this is really well done. I think this is a very nice piece of wire work. So we look at loop height, we look at the bow being level, because it just needs to look nice, and I'm sure it's not very important actually, as long as it holds the teeth. I would say that it needs to go about halfway up the teeth is the most important bit,
Okay.
because you've got acrylic on this side, and you're trying to sandwich the teeth between the acrylic and the bow. So if the bow's very low on the teeth,
Then you get torque. So
then
you
might,
get tip.
yeah, you might be able to rotate the roots of the teeth if you activated the bow. So you want to have it, what they usually say, in the middle of the teeth. So also you look for it being nice and level and smooth in this way, because quite often they can have a lot of jagged bends in them. So there are marks for the sort of the level bow being level in this direction, so it's a nice horseshoe, but also for being level in this direction.
Okay.
Now the next most important bit again is the tag work going over the contact points, because again this is where the lower premolar is going to bite normally, and it's very difficult to keep this wire work out of the way, and you've got a premolar that's going to come right up in there, and obviously if you've got lots of wire work sticking out, you can't grind it away to get the thing to seat properly. So you have to make sure that the tag work is
As
quite
low as
close
possible
there.
into contact.
Yeah. And then the same thing for the tag work in the front here, that you need to have the space underneath it to allow the acrylic underneath, but not to have too thick a base plate.
Okay.
Alright?
Yep. That makes sense.
So those are all the ways to look at it.
It's quite a
Because
lot
I
of
think
things.
if you can understand how the marking system works, then it probably helps you to understand how to make an appliance that would work. And so basically you pass if you've got something that would stay in, that would do the job. You do really well if you make it look nice as well at the same time, and you would fail if it's a sort of appliance that couldn't be worn, couldn't be adjusted, and wouldn't do the job.
Okay.
So
So you
I
want
think
something
it's fairly
practical,
reasonable.
yeah.
It's a very, I think the marking scheme does work out to be fairly, practical.
Okay.
So
And the pass mark is 50%, did you say?
So pass mark combined is 50%.
Okay. So you could do
So
really well in one.
Most people, I would say, general rule is that most people score a bit better on the fixed and pick up a few, so they can use a few marks to compensate for not such a good removal.
So removal was actually tricky.
And
bit.
I don't know how you would, you've got 3 hours. How long does this take? I mean, this thing should probably take you no more than 20 minutes.
20 minutes for that. Okay.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah.
Minutes?
Light years?
This one might take... Well, you should be able to do these. These are
Yeah.
all fairly straightforward bends. This one would probably take... you could maybe do that in an hour, could you? and that would leave you at least an hour and a half, hour and 3/4 to do.
It's actually,
bit.
yeah, you need to be quite quick with it. You need to just produce it.
Well, you need to be able
quickly.
to know that you can, whichever bit you find the most difficult, obviously you've got to put more time into it. So I don't think anyone ever feels that they're short of time. It's just that, you know, they're perhaps short of some
Practice.
some skill, or knowing which bits are going to score the arch form right. And once you've got the arch form right, then you get the thing flat. So the thing to do is you've got the beaks, the square beak and the round beak. So you want to bend the right angle bends around the square beak to start with, and so you just bend that up like that. Now you have to be careful with this wire because it's very brittle.
Do you overbend it to get it at 90 degrees?
Well, you bend it to 90 degrees so that it goes up at 90 degrees. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then one trick is to try and get them all to be the same height. Now for an upper one you want it to be about 8 or 9 millimeters high, and for a lower one about 7 or 8. But I usually bend them up by putting the top of the plier in here and starting the bend, and that way I know they're all going to be the same height, because then I can put the round beak on here and then bend this round the rock. Now you need to push the wire around the plier rather than turning the plier, because if you yank the plier you'll split the wire. That's one of the problems. And so you get a loop that's roughly 9 millimeters, 8.5, 9 millimeters tall, which is the right sort of size. So if you've got your own pair of pliers, then just get to know where on the plier will give you a loop of about the right height. And then what you've got to do is put the next right angle bend in. Now the idea... Hold on a minute now. Is that showing up? Because it won't really show up on the carpet, will it?
Oh, on the carpet.
Can you see?
Yeah. It's I've zoomed in, so it does show up on the video. Is that what you meant?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you've got to try and get this one as near the right height as possible. I'll just do it against the white because I can't see against the table with all those lines on it. Now you've got to make sure that the thickness of the wire is accounted for, so you put the side of the plier here roughly level to that side of the wire, not this side of the wire, otherwise you make it a bit too long. And then you've got to put your bend in here so that you get them roughly the... Now it doesn't matter if they're slightly out in height. You've got to get your right angle bend spot on, and then it might need some adjustment at this stage to get the wire level so that it all sits on the table. So you want to try and get it roughly so that it's flat on the table again. Now that's not quite a right angle bend at that corner, so I'm just going to... So that you've got... to go back down a bit. But the thing is, it's knowing what to do when it's not quite right. That's the important bit. So it's really one of those things that you need to have a go at and see how you get on. So you can... Now I'd get that as near flat as possible at this stage. If they're not the same length, so let's make the next one. So we're going to measure up on the... Say we do the next one adjacent to, just for an exercise. We just bend it up here, so that's, you decide that's where you want it to be. Then you can make a bend here, and you measure the height of the thing again, so they're made that. Is that in the right place? So you roughly have them all the same height, and you can put that in there. So that now, if I make this one a bit the wrong size, when it comes back down, because they want to be reasonably tight and keep those reasonably parallel. Now if I make this side, what should I do? Make this side a bit short, so that there's a bit of a step in it now.
Yeah.
Now that's not the end of the world, because it's quite easy to open up the curve on the short side and then tighten up the curve on the long side, and that will gradually bring it down, as long as you so what was not the right height is now much closer to being the right height, so we can, it's not terribly beautiful, but and we need to try and get the plane of the wire level, which usually means bending it here a bit until it goes reasonably flat.
I suppose if you don't check for flatness every step, then there's a knock-on effect on the rest, and then it's really difficult to...
It's usually easier to get this bit right at this stage rather than
later.
just ploughing on and getting it.
And it doesn't make it straight to sit on it.
What?
It doesn't make it straight to sit on it.
You can it on the steamroller. That isn't bending around that way enough.
Actually, I've got to listen to my own jokes now.
What?
When I play this video, I've got to listen to my own jokes.
Okay, so that's sort of getting there, and then you just need to put the next two in. So we just do it the same on the other side, so they're roughly in the same place. It's usually easier to tip the first bit all the way back over the end of the plier.
I think that's what I did, yeah. And then I squeezed it.
And then you can turn this bit right round the plier like that. And then you can turn it back like that. So, and then you just have to